Welcome to Peace TV's General News. At a press conference on April 24th, Lieutenant General Igor Konashenkov, spokesman for the Russian Ministry of Defense, announced a Russian raid on the Ukrainian city of Konstantinovka in the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic (DPR), which caused 60 gunmen of the Georgia Corps were killed, 15 military vehicles were destroyed, and 20 foreign mercenaries were seriously injured. Konashenkov said the attack was carried out using Russia's Iskander short-range ballistic missile system and targeted a library in Konstantinovka, which foreign gunmen are using as accommodation and ammunition storage. The dead gunmen belonging to the Georgia Corps took part in the torture and execution of Russian servicemen near Kiev in March last year, the ministry spokesman added. Konashenkov asserted that the Russian military possesses data on all foreign mercenaries involved in the execution of Russian prisoners of war. Each of them will be properly punished, warned a spokesman for the Russian Defense Ministry. The city of Konstantinovka has recently been the focus of intense shelling, as Russian forces closed a siege on the neighboring city of Bakhmut. Ukraine has created new units to stop the advance of Russian forces on this front. Since Russia began its military campaign in Ukraine, Moscow and Kiev have repeatedly accused each other of abuse and torture, as well as brutal treatment of civilians. In May last year, the Russian Investigative Committee said it had reviewed a video published on social media showing a Georgian mercenary abusing a Russian soldier after his arrest. Russia has repeatedly warned against treating foreign mercenaries in Ukraine as combat forces under the Geneva Conventions, and in case of arrest they will be tried and face the maximum prison sentence. Russia also claimed that efforts by Ukrainian authorities to provide foreign fighters with legal protection by listing them to the armed forces or issuing Ukrainian passports did not save them from prosecution. The Russian Defense Ministry accused Western governments of encouraging their citizens to join the war against Russian troops in Ukraine as mercenaries. Moscow declares zero tolerance for mercenaries in Ukraine. Russia has also repeatedly announced airstrikes against foreign mercenary training centers in Ukraine. In another development, Yevgeny Prigozhin, the head of the Russian private military group Wagner, ordered the fighters fighting in Bakhmut to shoot down Ukrainian soldiers instead of taking them prisoner. Wagner's statement came after a Telegram channel affiliated with Wagner's forces posted an exchange allegedly of Ukrainian soldiers. In this recording, Ukrainian soldiers appear to have discussed shooting down Russian prisoners of war.
According to TASS news agency, a suicide drone UAV containing 17 kilograms of explosives, believed to be from Ukraine, has crashed into the eastern suburbs of Moscow, Russia. This UAV was discovered on April 23rd in Bogorodsky, an eastern suburb about 30 kilometers from Moscow, Russia. The UAV contained about 17 kilograms of C4 explosive and appears to have crashed after running out of fuel. Some sources say that this could be a fixed-wing UAV. UJ-22 manufactured by Ukraine in 2021, it has a range of about 800 kilometers, or twice the normal range of a suicide UAV. It can carry loads up to 20 kilograms. Ukraine has not yet commented on this information. In another related development, Mikhail Razvazaev, governor of the port city of Sevastopol in Crimea, said that Russia had prevented a drone attack on the country's Black Sea Fleet. On the night of April 23rd, Moscow suspects Ukraine is behind the raid. Sevastopol is a port city located in the southwestern part of the Crimean Peninsula. On the Black Sea coast, UAVs play an increasingly important role. In the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, Kiev claims that its military now possesses unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs with a range of more than 3,000 kilometers, capable of reaching the Russian capital Moscow. Earlier in December 2022, it was reported that the Ukrainian company Aerodrone had passed certification and was allowed to operate UAV systems in the armed forces. 33O Enterprise with a payload of up to 300 kilograms and D-80 Discovery has a payload of up to 80 kilograms. In early March this year, Dmytro Shymkiv, co-owner of Aerodrone and former deputy director of the Office of the President of Ukraine, announced that this type of UAV has been approved for use in the armed forces. At the same time, Aerodrone put into mass production of this type of UAV, according to the order of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. The Aerodrone 300 drone can fly up to 3,100 kilometers.
Before that, on the night of April 20th, the city of Belgorod bordering Russia-Ukraine recorded a large explosion. The Russian Defense Ministry later confirmed that a Su-34 bomber of the country's Air Force accidentally dropped a bomb on the Belgorod area. According to some sources, at least 2 bombs are believed to have been mistakenly dropped on the city of Belgorod on April 20th, including one that did not explode. Authorities in the city therefore had to evacuate 3,000 people on the night of April 22nd to search for this bomb. About 90 buses were deployed to assist people in Belgorod to evacuate on the night of April 22nd. According to Belgorod Region Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov, teams of Russian engineers and police have blocked off the Shalandin Road area, not far from the site of the first explosion, and found the second bomb here. Fully equipped mine disposal specialists were seen at the scene in case the bomb went off. After being recovered, the bomb was moved to a safe area and destroyed by functional forces. Locals were allowed to return home after authorities determined the danger had been completely eliminated. According to Defense Express, the type of bomb dropped on Belgorod by Su-34 fighters on April 20th was a Bet-AB-50 PAC penetrating bomb. Developed under the Soviet Union and perfected by Russian engineers, the Bet-AB-50 PAC bomb has a weight of more than 500 kilograms and the ability to carry a penetrating warhead containing 77 kilograms of powerful explosives. This bomb has a very special design with a jet propulsion at the rear, allowing it to gain more kinetic energy before it hits the ground. Thanks to the use of penetrating warheads with high durability and slow detonation, the Bet-AB bomb will take advantage of its powerful kinetic energy to penetrate deep into the enemy's bunkers and then explode to maximize. When penetrating hard surfaces such as rock, the bomb creates a funnel-shaped crater with a diameter of about 4.5 meters. In addition, according to some sources, the Bet-AB-50 PAC bomb version can also penetrate the 550 mm thick armor of the tank. The city of Belgorod currently has a population of about 400,000 people and is located near the border of Russia and Ukraine. Since the conflict between the two neighboring countries broke out, the city has recorded a number of explosions, some of which are alleged to have been caused by suicide drones and Ukrainian artillery.
The son of Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov, Nikolai Peskov, claims he served in Russia's Wagner mercenary force in Ukraine. I considered it my duty. I couldn't sit on the sidelines and watch friends and other people go there. Peskov said in an interview with Russian newspaper Komsomolskaya Pravda, when I went there, I had to change my last name. Nobody really knew who I was. He said he served for nearly 6 months and received the Medal for Courage. CNN could not independently verify the claims. Children of government figures and Russia's elite have received criticism in the past for failing to fight in Ukraine or go to the front lines. Nikolai Peskov's interview comes after the leader of Wagner, Yevgeny Prigozhin, said Friday that the Kremlin spokesperson's son had served as a gunner with his mercenary force. Prigozhin did not specify what period of time he was talking about. According to Prigozhin, Nikolai Peskov served with the Wagner Group for 6 months under false documents, with a different last name, working as a loader of an ammunition supply vehicle. The Wagner chief said Peskov attended a 3-week training at their base in Molkino and later left for Luhansk. The outspoken Wagner boss has a track record of making unsubstantiated claims, often employing sarcasm, and CNN is unable to verify his claim. You're a man, be him, Russian army video says. As Moscow tries to turn more civilians into fighters, Russia's defense ministry has unveiled a new effort to bolster its forces fighting in Ukraine, an advertising campaign calling on Russians to become real men and highlighting the financial benefits of signing up. In the video, released on Telegram, 3 men are shown. The first is a security guard. Is this the kind of defender you wanted to become? The voiceover asks. Next, a fitness trainer is seen. Along with the caption, is your power really in this? Then, a taxi driver, with the question, is this kind of path you wanted to choose? Finally, all 3 men are shown in full military gear. The slogan, "You're a man, be him," appears. Russia is known to have difficulties recruiting for its war. President Putin signed laws, making it harder to evade conscription earlier this month. During Russia's partial mobilization last September, men dodged the draft by leaving their registered addresses, not signing for draft letters and warning their family to do the same. Putin's move to block such loopholes has spurred fears in Russia that more citizens may soon be mobilized to fight in Ukraine. Britain's Ministry of Defense alluded to the new Russian video campaign in its latest update, saying it was highly unlikely the campaign would attract the 400,000 volunteers Russia is reportedly seeking.
The Russian Defense Ministry said that Russian forces have taken control of 2 more areas in the western city of Bakhmut. In the direction of Donetsk, assault detachments liberated 2 areas west of the city of Bakhmut in the past 24 hours, Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Igor Konashenkov said on April 23rd. The airborne troops are supporting the assault detachments north and south of the city. The Russian Defense Ministry often refers to the units of the private security group Wagner participating in the battle in Bakhmut as shock detachments, rather than referring to these forces directly. According to Konashenkov, the Russian Air Force made 6 sorties, while artillery completed 72 rounds of fire in the area. Ukrainian officials have not commented on the Russian Defense Ministry's information. Meanwhile, Ukrainian Lieutenant General Alexander Syrsky posted a picture of him studying a map with 3 other people with the comment, "Bakhmut front line. We continue to entrench. Keep strategic boundaries." In an interview with Al Arabiya on April 23rd, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky also stated that he would not give up Bakhmut because if he captured this city, Russian forces could advance further. Russia and Ukraine are both focused on the battle in Bakhmut. Kiev says the battle at Bakhmut was the key to holding back Moscow's forces on the Eastern Front. Taking control of Bakhmut could allow the Russian military to directly target Ukraine's defenses in the nearby city of Chasiv Yar, while opening the way for 2 key cities in the Donetsk region, Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. Russia announced on April 19th that it had won 3 more regions in Bakhmut. Yan Gagin, an advisor to the leader of the Donetsk People's Republic DPR, said last week that Wagner was in control of 90% of Bakhmut and that their advance was unstoppable.
The Donetsk official said that Wagner forces blocked the supply route to Bakhmut and closed the lid. With Ukrainian units entrenched there, Wagner gunmen approached and controlled an area hundreds of meters long on the way from Chasiv Yar to Bakhmut, making it impossible for the enemy to supply and support units in the city. In fact, Bakhmut's depot closed the lid. Yan Gagin, an advisor to the leadership of the Donetsk People's Republic DPR, said today, Russia often uses the term "kuka" to refer to large encirclements on the battlefield, where they use large forces to encircle many sides, leaving only one way out for the enemy. Closed casserole is a way to describe the situation when Russian units completely encircle the enemy, leaving them with no way to retreat. The highway from Chasiv Yar to Bakhmut is a vital supply route for Ukrainian forces, helping them deliver supplies, ammunition, and reinforcements to units entrenched in the city, and transport wounded soldiers to the backline if this road were cut off. Ukrainian forces fighting in the western region of Bakhmut would be completely isolated. Ukraine's defense ministry has not commented on the information. Advisor Gagin said on April 19th that Wagner forces were in control of 90% of Bakhmut and their advance was unstoppable. Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Igor Konashenkov later announced that regular Russian forces had flanked Wagner units, preventing the Ukrainian army's attempt to counterattack in the northwest and part of central Bakhmut. Russia and Ukraine are both focused on the battle in Bakhmut. Kiev says the battle at Bakhmut was the key to holding back Moscow's forces on the Eastern Front. Meanwhile, taking control of Bakhmut could allow the Russian military to directly target Ukraine's defenses in the nearby city of Chasiv Yar, while opening the way for two key cities in the Donetsk region, Kramatorsk and Kramatorsk-Sloviansk. British intelligence said that Moscow was withdrawing regular forces from neighboring cities to herd troops to Bakhmut, supporting Wagner to achieve this goal, while Ukraine had to give up part of the city under pressure from the British enemy.
Moscow announced an attack on a defense factory specializing in repairing and testing Stryz-Uovs used in raids on Russian territory. The factory of an aviation industry group near the city of Kiev, which repairs and tests unmanned aerial vehicles Uovs with Stryz jet engines, was attacked, a spokesman for the Russian Defense Ministry said. Igor Konashenkov said today. General Konashenkov did not specify the type of weapon used in the raid, adding that Russian artillery, missiles and aircraft hit more than 100 positions of troops and equipment in Ukraine within 24 hours. Several Ukrainian Uovs were also shot down over the Donetsk, Lugansk and Kherson regions. The Ukrainian military has not commented on the information. 2141 Stryz is a long-range reconnaissance Uov that was put into service by the Soviet Union in the late 1970s and retired in 1989. Then many were restored by the Ukrainian military since 2014. The original 2141 model is equipped with a turbojet engine, can do duty within a radius of 1,000 kilometers with a cruise speed of 1,000 kilometers h, equipped with many optical, electronic and infrared sensors. The 2141 as deployed by Ukraine since last year seem to have removed the reconnaissance sensor in favor of a satellite navigation system and explosive blocks to attack fixed targets on the ground. Moscow has repeatedly accused Kiev of using Stryz drones to attack towns and cities on Russian soil, some of which are hundreds of kilometers from the Ukrainian border. Kiev denies claims that its Uov flew into Russian territory and caused damage to civilian infrastructure. The most serious incident occurred in early December 2022 when the Russian Defense Ministry said that Ukraine used a Stryz Uov to attack the Dyagilevo and Engels military airports, killing 3 technicians, calling this a terrorist act to disrupt the combat operations of the Strategic Air Force.
The Gromta tactical ballistic missile complex has been deployed to Zaporizhia. Ukrainian authorities claim the missile can reach a range of up to 500 kilometers, Mr. Rogov said. Earlier, the Russian Defense Ministry confirmed that the country's air defense forces had shot down a missile from the Gromta complex for the first time since the conflict between Moscow and Kiev broke out. In September 2022, the agency's spokesman, Lieutenant General Igor Konashenkov, announced that the Russian military had raided a Grom missile production facility. In the Dnieper region, the Gromta short-range ballistic missile system was developed by the Yuzhnoye Design Bureau, the Pavlograd chemical plant and other Ukrainian defense enterprises. This missile is designed to destroy command facilities, communication stations, key weapons complexes and many other key targets located in the ground. This is considered a weapon with the same purpose and power as the Russian Iskander tactical missile system. The Gromta has a range of 50 to 500 kilometers. It is mounted on a 6x6 truck chassis and also serves as a mobile launch vehicle. This system is equipped with 2 rocket launchers towed behind the truck. The missile can carry a variety of warheads, such as fragmentation, penetration, cluster bombs or thermobaric. Ukraine is said to have successfully tested the Gromta in early 2017 and will put it into service as a replacement for the Tuchkayu short-range tactical ballistic missile with a range of only 120 kilometers. Zaporizhia is one of the Ukrainian provinces announced by Russia in October last year. However, the Russian military has not yet controlled the entire territory of this province, especially in the capital city of Zaporizhia and the area around the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. Recently, the Ukrainian military has sent a force of soldiers and military equipment to this area to be ready for counterattacks to regain the territory.
The United States is said to have warned the Kiev authorities that the Ukrainian armed forces would not be able to hold the city of Bakhmut before the Russian attack, The Washington Post reported. The Washington Post newspaper, citing leaked documents, said that since January, the US government had warned Ukraine about the possibility of being surrounded by Russian troops in the city of Bakhmut in Donetsk province, eastern Ukraine. The document, marked as top secret, claims that Russia's steady advances since last November have jeopardized Ukraine's ability to hold the city of Bakhmut. The document indicates that Ukrainian forces could face the risk of being surrounded unless they withdraw within the next month. However, according to the Washington Post, all of these warnings were ignored by the Kiev government. Bloomberg news agency in February quoted US and European officials as saying that the West had advised Ukraine to wait for an opportunity to launch an attack in the spring. According to Western officials, in order to preserve forces before the main battle tanks donated by the West are handed over, Ukraine should accept the withdrawal of troops from Bakhmut. Bloomberg reported, the West recommended that Ukraine should withdraw to the west, creating a new line to prevent Russia from continuing to advance to the cities of Kramatorsk and Slovyansk. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said last month that Bakhmut has more symbolic value than strategic and operational value. He said that the defeat of Bakhmut does not mean that Russia can change the course of this war. Bakhmut is a small city in the Donetsk Oblast, eastern Ukraine. The fighting for control of Bakhmut between Russia and Ukraine has lasted for many months and has cost both sides huge resources. This is the only front where Russia has made big strides since last summer. Experts also say that Bakhmut has little strategic value, mainly carrying symbolic value. However, Moscow needs a victory to revive morale and prepare for a large-scale offensive plan this spring or summer. Ukrainian officials also admit that Bakhmut is currently of little strategic value, but that the country's military is trying to hold the city for as long as possible to deplete resources and hold back Russian forces while waiting for aid from the West. Ukraine fears that if it controls Bakhmut, Russia could expand its offensive to other key cities in the east. On the other hand, Ukraine said that by keeping Russia in Bakhmut, Kiev is causing Moscow to lose its top elite forces in the context that Ukraine is on the verge of a large-scale counterattack. Yan Gagin, a senior advisor to the leader of the separatist Donetsk region, said this week that Russia's private Wagner military forces are believed to have control of about 90% of Bakhmut. A week earlier, Wagner leader Yevgeny Prigozhin said that Russia controlled more than 80% of Bakhmut, including all government buildings. Over the past time, Ukraine has repeatedly stated that it has no plans to withdraw from Bakhmut. Ukraine's Deputy Defense Minister Hanna Maliar stressed that if the Ukrainian armed forces do not protect Bakhmut, the Russian army will move deeper into Ukrainian territory.
President Zelensky, we will not let go of Bakhmut, according to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. If Bakhmut is captured, Russia can use it as a springboard to advance to larger cities in Donetsk, Kramatorsk, and Slovyansk. We cannot let go of Bakhmut because this will help Russia and Wagner forces to expand their battlefront, control more of our lands. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said in an interview with Al Arabiya news site on 23/4. According to Zelensky, if Russia captures Bakhmut, Moscow can see it as a springboard to move on to larger cities in Donetsk, in eastern Ukraine, Kramatorsk and Slovyansk, although some analysts say Bakhmut has little strategic value. Zelensky insists Ukraine will not give up the city. He believes Ukraine is capable of repelling Russian forces from Bakhmut, and Kiev is ready for a counter-offensive. I cannot describe the situation as good, but we are fighting. We are stronger than a year ago, Zelensky said, calling on Western allies to continue to step up military aid for Ukraine. The fighting between Russia and Ukraine for control of Bakhmut has lasted for nearly a year and has caused great losses on both sides. Yevgeny Prigozhin, head of the Wagner private military group, the vanguard of Russia's attacks on Bakhmut, last week claimed Moscow controlled about 80% of the city. However, Kiev denied this information. The commander of the Ukrainian army, Oleksandr Syrsky, confirmed on April 23 that the Ukrainian army still holds the Bakhmut line, while fighting continued fiercely in Bakhmut. The situation in Kherson, the southern Ukrainian front, also heated up again. The US-based Institute for the Study of War ISW, citing sources from Russian military bloggers, said that last week, Ukrainian forces began to land on the eastern bank of the Dnieper River in Kherson, breaking through the defenses of Ukraine. Russia is here. Vladimir Soldat, a Kherson official appointed by Russia, denied the report that the enemy has not been able to set foot on the eastern bank of the Dnieper. We still have complete control of this area, Soldat wrote on Telegram.
Russia announced that it had attacked the command center and destroyed the equipment of the Ukrainian army during the fighting in the east. In the settlement of Torskoye in the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic, the Commander Observation Center of the 23rd Specialized Infantry Battalion of the Ukrainian Army was attacked. In the settlements of Orikov and Kamenskoye in Zaporizhzhia province, two observation centers of the 65th and 128th Mountain Brigades of the Ukrainian Army were also attacked, Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Lieutenant General Igor Konashenkov said on April 24th. Konashenkov said that in 24 hours, combat aircraft, missiles and artillery of the Russian group of forces attacked 92 Ukrainian artillery units at firing positions, as well as their troops and equipment. Ukraine in 126 regions. On the same day, the spokesman of the Russian Army's Eastern Combat Group, Alexander Gordayev, announced that it had discovered and eliminated two strongholds of the Ukrainian armed forces in the southern region of Donetsk in the Donbass region. This is also the fiercest fighting front in eastern Ukraine, causing heavy losses to Russia and Ukraine. In the South Donetsk region, the leading units of the Eastern Combat Group detected the enemy's mobile unit. An army truck and 3 servicemen were shot down with light weapons and grenade launchers. The unit operating the heavy flamethrower system TOS-1 eliminated 2 enemy strongholds near the residential area of Novodonetskoye, added Mr. Gordayev. According to the spokesman, the Russian Tor missile system shot down a Ukrainian Furia drone. In the Zaporizhzhia area, reconnaissance forces and vehicles detected and attacked with mortar fire an enemy reconnaissance group near the settlement of Malinov. 3 servicemen were eliminated, Gordayev informed. On the Donetsk front, Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Igor Konashenkov confirmed that Russian forces had removed more than 280 Ukrainian soldiers and foreign mercenaries from the battle ring during the offensive in Donetsk on April 24th. More than 280 Ukrainian servicemen and foreign mercenaries, 1 infantry fighting vehicle, 1 armored personnel carrier, 4 armored combat vehicles, 11 motor vehicles, 1 Grad rocket launcher and 1 D howitzer -30 was destroyed in this area in 24 hours, Konashenkov said. In the settlement of Terny in Donetsk, Russia announced that it was blocking the activities of 2 Ukrainian spy groups. In addition, Russian air defenses shot down 38 Ukrainian drones in one day. In an interview with Al Arabiya published on April 24th, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky expressed confidence in Ukraine's ability to repel Russia, asserting that Ukraine was preparing for a counterattack. When asked about the situation on the ground in Ukraine, Mr. Zelensky acknowledged the challenge, but stressed that Kiev is fighting and will become stronger. We hope and we believe that through daily steps we are getting closer to victory, Zelensky said, adding that the Ukrainian people are determined to regain the lands controlled by Russia and develop the country. Zelensky also spoke about the situation in the city of Bakhmut, where a fierce battle between Ukrainian forces and Russian forces is taking place. We cannot give up Bakhmut because this will help expand the battlefront and will give the Russian and Wagner forces an opportunity to win more of our lands, the Ukrainian president said.
The European Union EU High Representative for Foreign and Security Policy, Josep Borrell, said that the EU will do everything possible to supply ammunition to Ukraine. We are doing everything in our power to deliver ammunition to Ukraine. All ministers understand the urgency of this. Only by increasing the supply of weapons can we help Ukraine to respond to Russian attacks. RIA Novosti quoted Borrell as saying on April 24th, US National Security Council spokesman John Kirby said in an interview with MSNBC on April 24 that the US wanted to make sure that Ukraine's counterattack in the next few weeks or months would be successful. So Washington continued. Ukraine has said they want to launch a counterattack in the spring, in the next few weeks or months. And we want to make sure Kiev succeeds, which is why we continue to provide $325 million worth of ammunition and military equipment to Ukraine, Kirby said. We are also training battalions of Ukrainian soldiers abroad. When and where they strike is up to President Zelensky, Kirby added. Russian T-1 for Armata tanks begin to be used in Ukraine. RIA Novosti today, April 25, quoted sources as saying that the Russian armed forces have begun using the latest T-1 for Armata tanks to attack Ukrainian positions. The Russian military has begun using the latest Armata tanks to open fire on Ukrainian positions, however. The T-1 for Armata has not yet engaged in direct strike operations on the battlefield, the source said. The source added that since the end of last year, the crews of T-14 Armata have undergone combat training in Donbass. Ukraine has not yet commented on the reports. Experts said that Russia is maintaining 7 fronts in the conflict that has lasted more than 14 months with Ukraine. And these front lines can determine Kiev's counterattack tactics in the future, according to the US-based Institute for the Study of War ISW. Russia is operating along 7 main axes, and these directions could help Ukraine determine future counterattack tactics, according to the ISW. Russia is deploying 5 offensives in Lupyansk, Lugansk, Bakhmut, Avdiivka in Donetsk, and the western Donetsk, East Zaporizhia axis. Meanwhile, Moscow is reinforcing to defensive zones west of Zaporizhia and Kherson, in the direction of Kupiansk. The forces of the Western Military District WMD carried out limited attacks in the first months of 2023, but have not made significant progress, the ISW said. In the Kharkov-Lugansk intersection, Russia appears to have deployed the WMD's 2nd Motorized Rifle Division in this direction. In addition, at the tip of the Lugansk offensive, Russia is trying to penetrate the Svatov, Kremina area and has achieved some tactical achievements. The 3rd Russian offensive point is the Bakhmut fire pan, the town in Donetsk that has witnessed the fighting that has lasted for months, with Russian resources already pouring into a city not so large as Bakhmut. It is clear that Moscow's goal is to capture this stronghold before Ukraine counterattacks. Russia's 4th front line is the Avdiivka-Donetsk axis, where Russia deploys forces from the Northern Fleet, the Southern Military District and the Donetsk separatist militia. However, the ISW believes that Russia has not made any major progress in this area since the beginning of 2023. Meanwhile, in the 5th advance in southern Donetsk and eastern Zaporizhia, Russia's Eastern Military District seems to have suffered material losses while trying to gain control of Vuhledar. In the context of the war showing signs of stalemate, Russia seems to be in favor of keeping western Zaporizhia and part of the Kherson region. The area is of strategic importance because it ensures Russia controls the land corridor leading to the Crimean Peninsula. In recent times, many Western experts have said that Ukraine can attack Melitopol to find a way to the Sea of Azov, and at the same time cut off Russia's land corridor. Moscow is deploying large forces, digging lines hundreds of kilometers long, seemingly stopping the momentum of Ukraine's counterattack if this scenario occurs. According to ISW, some developments on the battlefield show that, after more than 14 months, the Russian army shows signs of being stretched on many fronts and fragmented in some important areas. This could affect Russia's efforts to maintain control of the regions in the face of Ukraine's counterattack. Russia has not commented on the ISW's comments. Russia faces some challenges in the war, but Ukraine also has certain difficulties, according to observers. Kiev now needs to counterattack to prove to the West that they can defeat Russia. However, many experts warn that in order to switch from defensive tactics to counterattacks, Ukraine needs more resources and equipment to be effective. The attackers often need 3 times more weapons and personnel than the defenders, and Ukraine's potential is still not as good as Russia's despite receiving a lot of Western aid. Despite continuing to aid Ukraine, the US is said to have also prepared a scenario that Kiev's counterattack plan did not achieve the expected results. Politico news site, citing unnamed sources on April 24th, said that the administration of US President Joe Biden was quietly preparing for the scenario that the counterattack plan would not bring a complete victory to Ukraine, although Washington has affirmed its unwavering support for Kiev. Officials in the country are concerned that the White House may receive criticism if Ukraine's counteroffensive does not achieve the expected results. Hardliners will argue that the United States and its allies are not supplying Kiev with enough weapons, while others see it as proof that Ukraine cannot defeat Russia if Ukraine is unable to achieve a substantial victory on the battlefield. A question will inevitably rise as to whether it is time to negotiate an end to the conflict, said Richard Haass, chairman of the US Council on Foreign Affairs. We have paid a heavy price. Our ammunition reserves are running out while we need to prepare for other situations in the world, the official said. An unnamed US official said that Washington has increased the supply of weapons and equipment to Ukraine and responded almost entirely to Kiev's request. However, Washington remains concerned about the outcome Ukraine could achieve after the counteroffensive. The US military believes that the Russia-Ukraine conflict has turned into a trench war. Politico initially reported that the number of Ukrainian soldiers killed since the beginning of the conflict was 100,000, but later corrected this as the total number of casualties, including wounded. Politico also pointed out that Kiev's consumption rate of weapons and ammunition has exceeded the capacity of the Western defense industry. Now, the Pentagon is skeptical that Ukraine can achieve its goal of reaching Crimea, a peninsula controlled by Russia since 2014. Even so, Washington still hopes that Kiev will be able to impede its supply routes. Moscow, some US officials told Politico a temporary armistice or ceasefire would give Ukraine a chance to regain some more territory later. In addition, US officials also proposed to persuade Kiev to come to the negotiating table with a commitment to provide Ukraine with the same security guarantees as a NATO member, committing to continue providing military and financial support. On the other hand, the West also seeks to lobby China to persuade Russia to negotiate. Neither the White House nor Ukraine have commented on the information. The US and its allies are said to be actively accelerating the pace of military aid to help Ukraine prepare for a planned counteroffensive in late spring and early summer. Some recent signals suggest that Kiev seems to be on the verge of counterattack in the south to cut off the land corridor from Russia to Crimea. However, some experts do not rule out that this is a diversion of Ukraine. The head of Ukraine's intelligence service, Kirill Budanov, said that Russia has turned defensive on most fronts, with the exception of Bakhmut, in an interview with Ukraine's RBC news agency. The official said, Russia has completely turned on the defensive everywhere. The areas where they are trying are now only Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Marinka. Forces Russia applies the tactics used in Bakhmut to both Avdiivka and Marinka. Russia has not yet commented on the statement. However, Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Igor Konashenkov said on April 23rd that the Russian army had controlled to more areas west of Bakhmut. The official did not give further details or specify which areas are still in Ukrainian hands. The Ukrainian army is said to be preparing for a spring counterattack, according to Sky News. Observers believe that Ukraine will target the Russian-held areas of Kherson and Zaporizhia. If successful, Ukraine could cut off the land corridor between Russia and Crimea. In preparation for a counter-offensive, Ukrainian forces recently established a base near the town of Oleshki. Located on the east bank of the Dnieper River, the Institute for the Study of War, a think tank based in Washington, USA, said Ukraine has also recently received sophisticated weapons from its Western allies, and many of its troops are also trained in the West, raising expectations that it will counterattack. In a debate on social media with fellow writer Stephen King, US technology billionaire Elon Musk claimed to have donated $100 million to Ukraine. In the conflict with Russia, I donated $100 million to Ukraine. How much did you give? Billionaire Musk asked King in a message on Twitter on April 23rd. The move is in response to writer King's suggestion a day earlier that the Twitter boss should transfer part of the proceeds from this social network's new paid verification model to the Ukrainian politician's Kiev support fund Serhiy Prytula, according to RT. Musk also retweeted an October 2020 message from Ukraine's Minister of Technology Mikhail Fedorov, in which Fedorov thanked the US billionaire for providing the Starlink satellite network to Ukraine. Musk emphasized that his company SpaceX has refused to receive funding from the US Department of Defense to help pay for the operating costs of this system, which was estimated at $100 million at the end of last year. Russia's defense ministry said on April 23rd that Russian troops had gained control of two more residential areas in the western districts of the city of Bakhmut, eastern Ukraine, and that Russian airborne units were providing reinforcements to the country, north and south. According to Reuters, Moscow and Kiev forces are still fighting fiercely in Bakhmut for full control of the city. Russian officials say taking over Bakhmut will allow their troops to push deeper into eastern Ukraine, prompting efforts to gain control of the nearby towns of Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. Yevgeny Prigozhin, the head of the Russian private Wagner military group that is taking part in Moscow's special military operation in Bakhmut, claims the force now controls 80% of the city. However, Kiev firmly denied this statement, as well as information that Ukrainian troops would withdraw from here. International news agencies admit they cannot independently verify these claims. The conflict between Russia and Ukraine led to a record increase in global military spending last year. The Stockholm International Peace Research Institute (SIPRI) said on April 24th that global military spending had increased to a record level in 2022, when the Russia-Ukraine conflict erupted in February last year. Specifically, according to SIPRI, world military spending has increased by 3.7% in real terms by 2022 to $2.40 billion. Europe's military spending is expected to grow 13% in 2022, mainly due to increases from Russia and Ukraine. But many countries across the continent are also increasing their arms purchases and bolstering their defences amid tensions. Straight increase. This is the largest annual increase in Europe since the end of the Cold War 30 years ago. This estimate includes multi-year plans to increase defense spending in a number of countries. We can expect military spending, said Diego Lopes da Silva, Senior Research Fellow at SIPRI. In Central and Western Europe will continue to increase in the coming years. Ukraine's military spending has grown by 640% in 2022, the largest annual increase recorded in SIPRI data since 1949. This figure does not include Western military aid to Ukraine. According to SIPRI, aid to Ukraine accounts for 2.3% of total US military spending in 2022. Meanwhile, Russia's military spending is estimated to increase by 9.2%. But SIPRI notes that it is uncertain about this figure. Dr. Lucy Berrow-Cedreau, Director of SIPRI's Arms Production and Military Expenditure Program, said, "The difference between Russia's budget plan and its actual military spending in 2022 shows that Russia's special military operation in Ukraine has cost Moscow much more than originally anticipated." The Russia-Ukraine war shows the importance of logistics, which is likened to the lifeline of each side in any conflict. Since ancient times, military strategists have repeatedly referred to logistics as the most important part of any engagement. In The Art of War, Sun Tzu once wrote, "An army without heavy equipment will lose. Without food, it will die. Without supplies, it will be difficult to live." Meanwhile, former US General Omar Bradley once said during World War II that amateurs talk only about tactics and strategy. Professionals talk about logistics. The Russia-Ukraine war is putting both sides in a balance. to handle the growing logistical challenges of a war of attrition, in an article by the Institute of Modern Warfare. At West Point Military Academy, USA, experts Michael Ugos, Edward Solo, Ryan Coons and Ben Hazen said that logistics is an important element of war, and modern warfare depends on flexible supply chains that connect the defense industry base with soldiers on the front lines. In the fighting, both sides desperately need to be provided with a large amount of personal equipment, weapons, ammunition, and food to maintain the hostilities, according to experts. The Russian-Ukrainian war has brought important lessons on testing, remediation, and strategy formulation in the confrontational logistics region. Confrontational logistics is defined as the environment in which the armed forces engaged in conflict continually pose challenges to the adversary in all areas and directly target the operations, facilities, and mutual logistics. The logistics supply chain model has four main components. The first is the product, the items and weapons that the military needs to sustain the war. The second is the facility, where production and storage activities are organized. The third is the vehicle, the mechanism for moving products between facilities. Finally, the route the vehicle uses to deliver the product. These are four important links that cannot be separated from each other. Missing any link can make an army pay a heavy price in the field. In an article published on the Nordic military research site, authors Per Skoglund, Tor Lister and Thomas Ekström outlined two different schools of logistics between the West and Russia. According to the West, logistics operations are conducted at strategic, operational, and tactical levels. At the strategic level, logistics involves decisions to ensure that a country has enough industrial capacity to produce, to meet the needs of its armed forces, a country's preparedness, and its capabilities, to access strategic resources from other countries. Meanwhile, operational and tactical logistics involve building a network of reinforcements to maintain resources for troops on the battlefield. Logistics now needs to ensure that the right supplies are in the right place at the right time and of the right kind to be useful. Logistics planning is a brainstorming activity requiring planners to have a holistic view to maintain the logistics rhythm without disrupting hostilities. According to Western theory, production facilities will transfer equipment, fuel, and equipment to a primary logistics center. From there to secondary logistics centers and tactical transport routes to the battlefield. Meanwhile, Russia's logistics tactics are inherited from the Soviet Union and have been upgraded over the years during the Soviet era. The doctrine of attack was based on the principle of ranks, that is, when one level fights, the next will be ready to deploy to the front line. Once replaced, the first level will reorganize personnel, equipment, weapons, and supplies to be ready to fight again. The logistics are based on the MTS support brigades, which will be in charge of resupplying combat levels. The main transport route is the railway system. Fuel and water are routed through the pipes. The MTS brigades include railway and pipeline construction and maintenance units to support forward marching forces. However, Russia at the moment does not maintain a multi-level force for a protracted war, which means that the forces deployed to fight do not have a second level. Russia also modernized its logistics from the Soviet Union with a more compact system. Even so, Russian military planning follows a strict, top-down hierarchical structure. The force commander chooses a plan of action. Logistics planning usually follows predefined principles, scenarios with calculation of ammunition consumption, consumables. As a result, logistics at the army and brigade levels were standardized and largely followed the same principles as in the Soviet era. In the face of fluctuations on the battlefield, it is difficult to map out the absolute exact logistics scenario at that time. The logistics capacity is not provided enough at the right time may occur. On the other hand, if the planned operation exceeds the actual performance, the risk of logistical bottlenecks could also be to go out and fill up the stockpile, while elsewhere there could be a shortage of weapons and supplies. According to experts, from the very beginning of the war from February 2022, Russia seems to have faced logistical problems that made their initial plan to fight quickly and win quickly not as effective as expected, according to expert Per Skoglund from the Swedish National Defense University. Inadequate logistical preparations forced Russia to withdraw its troops from Kiev a few weeks after the siege of the Ukrainian capital, according to Skoglund. Russia seems to initially only intend to conduct a short-term military operation, and its forces are only preparing a logistical plan to respond to that option. Russia's goal may be to capture Antonov Airport on the outskirts of Kiev to build a logistics base until it can bring in supplies by rail. However, the above plan of Russia did not go as expected when Ukraine regained control of Antonov Airport. After a few days, at this time, Russian combat units in the Kiev region faced a lack of logistical resources. The line of cars tens of kilometers long standing still around Kiev seems to be the result of the failed plan to control Antonov Airport, which led to the development of the plan being out of rhythm. Several reports on the battlefield at the time indicated that Russian troops stationed around Kiev appeared to be facing shortages of fuel, food, water, and equipment. As a result, Russia had to withdraw from the Kiev region in March 2022. On the other hand, as a legacy of the Soviet Union, Russia still maintains supply chain operation, relying on a dense rail network, and Ukraine seems to have understood this. The Ukrainian side has successfully destroyed many railway lines, making it difficult for the Russian logistics brigades to support their units, Skoglund said. The problem of logistical routes continued to challenge Russia in Kherson last fall. The emergence of the HIMARS multiple launch rocket system and Ukraine's selective attack strategy contributed to the withdrawal of Russian troops from the strategic city of Kherson. Ukraine used HIMARS to destroy nearly all major Russian-controlled bridges in the southern Kherson region, helping to cut off vital supplies of weapons, military equipment and personnel from Crimea. Ukraine has also used this weapon to accurately strike important Russian targets such as ammunition depots, logistics routes, and important supplies on the front lines and cause great damage. Experts note that the Ukrainian military continued to attack the bridges as soon as the Russian side tried to repair them, targeting repair equipment as well as roads until Moscow had difficulty in getting them. Repairs and logistics. Russian forces also tried to build a pontoon bridge below the Antonivsky Bridge to minimize damage, but the Ukrainian military also targeted this, causing Moscow to abandon this option. Finally, because Russia could not continue to hold on to the city of Kherson due to lack of supplies, Russia decided to withdraw from this area. This is a prime example of how attacking the logistics system has allowed a potentially weaker force like Ukraine to turn the tide against Russia without suffering too much damage, according to Skoglund. One of the problems Russia faces is the way it plans logistics. Russia often outlines a big plan first and then prepares step by step based on that. However, this does not seem appropriate when Russia has to send troops and resources to a battlefield where it does not yet have a complete network of reinforcements. The war is always changing, and the planning from top to bottom makes them lack the flexibility needed on the battlefield to respond to unpredictable developments. Every adjustment to the logistics plan requires approval from the upper levels in a step-by-step manner that slows down the reaction rate to the combat tempo, Skoglund said. On the other hand, the above problems are currently only in the distribution and delivery of supplies and weapons to frontline areas after more than a year of hostilities. Russia also faces a logistical production challenge. More than 10,000 sanctions, along with blockade measures, have had a strong impact on the Russian arms industry. Russia is speeding up production and looking for ways to replace components that it used to have to import from the West. The economic challenges of being sanctioned by the West could have a lasting impact on Russia's logistics and production of supplies. The longer the hostilities drag on, the greater the challenges Russia will face to ensure sustained supply efforts. For a war of attrition stretching along more than 1,000 kilometers of the front line. In the war of attrition, Both Russia and Ukraine face difficult logistical problems. Ukraine's defense production capacity has almost been seriously reduced because of the continuous Russian raids on the enemy's weapons production facilities in the early stages of the war. Russia attacked Ukraine's power grid for many months at the end of last year and early this year, causing the country to face severe power shortages to sustain civilian activities, as well as industrial production activities. Therefore, Ukraine is now almost dependent on the supply of Western weapons to maintain its logistical capacity. This poses difficult problems for Ukraine. Western resources are limited and some countries have shown signs of running out of supplies to forward to Ukraine. The question is, where will Ukraine get the resources to continue the war of attrition if hostilities drag on any longer? Western officials and experts previously said that the war with Russia seemed unlikely to end this year. This put more pressure on Ukraine that it must achieve success on the battlefield to strengthen the West's belief that it can defeat Russia with continued aid. Therefore, Ukraine seems to have no choice but to counterattack in the near future, but this is no easy task, according to military expert David Axe. Breaking through the Russian line is not easy, showing Ukraine's significant challenge when switching from defensive tactics to counterattacks. Since last fall, Ukraine has mainly defended from fortified positions that it has been preparing for months. To counter Russia, they may have to leave these positions and brace themselves for the damage. According to Forbes, conducting a major attack is always a high-risk task. Breaking through the enemy's fortified lines often causes more losses in force and weapons than when defending them. According to military experts, in order to prevail, the attacker needs to consolidate resources at least 3 times stronger than the opponent in the areas preparing to attack. This puts Ukraine in a vicious circle. They need a successful counterattack in order for NATO to provide more resources for future wars. However, they also need a large number of logistics and weapons supplies to organize an effective counterattack and maintain their advantage over Russia, a power with the world's leading defense production capacity. The problem of quantity is presenting Ukraine with many challenges, making it impossible for them to deploy a counterattack plan, even though it has been cherished for a long time. On the other hand, the diversity of Western-aided weapons sources on the one hand helps Ukraine improve its combat capabilities. On the other hand, also entails serious challenges. British and American experts say that the supply of weapons from the West has brought some effectiveness to Ukraine in the fight against Russia. However, according to them, the West's supply of different types of weapons is creating a logistic nightmare for Ukraine, because each weapon requires a unique way of operating, training, maintenance and use. Completely different. Most recently, the West decided to provide Ukraine with main battle tanks. This is a complex weapon. Much of the tank's combat effectiveness depends on the sophisticated electronic and computer systems inside, the maintenance and repair of tanks, and the supply of necessary components require detailed training from the crew onward. Every Western tank shipped to Ukraine is a product of each manufacturer from the UK, Germany, and the US, so their supply chain also depends on both countries. Repairs, maintenance to components will not always be available. Therefore, the more Western aid supplies and tanks, the greater the logistical pressure on Ukraine. Expert Wartling urged, the West should try to limit the number of types of weapons sent to Ukraine to ensure Kiev can operate them effectively.